Any proponent testimony today? Seeing none, are there any opponents that would like to speak today? Anyone in the neutral capacity like to speak? Seeing none, Senator Linehan, would you like to close? Senator Linehan waives closing, and that finishes our hearing on LB 303. We'll open up on LB 580. Lorraine's over there.
That's fine. That was quicker than anybody would have. Understand.
I hope that was on record.
That'd be great. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Sorry, my name is Matthew up there. I just want to ask if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, me. I'm sorry. You're right. That's
Or
it.
anybody, everybody. Please.
Everybody did introduce themselves at the start of the hearing except for me.
Okay.
So I'm Luann Linehan
I
from,
wasn't here.
that's okay. That we do that every hearing, every member introduces themselves. Is he in another committee? Oh, he's introducing another bill?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought we were just waiting for him to get here. So what's the next bill?
I've got it.
Crazy. Oh, you got it? So let's just go to that one. 495. Yeah. We will now, is that okay with you? Senator Breezy?
Yeah.
We will now, open the hearing on LB 495. Senator Breezy. So you can text him and tell him to. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't understand the full circumstances. I didn't ask that question.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan and fellow members of the Revenue Committee. I'm Tom Breezy, T-O-M-B-R-I-E-S-E. I represent the 41st District. I'm here today to introduce LB 495, which is legislation brought to me by Nebraska State Treasurer John Morante. Investing in Nebraska's College Savings Account Program, otherwise known as NEST 529, is an attractive option for many families and is a proven motivator for students to attend some form of higher education. LB 495 will make the NEST 529 program even more attractive by allowing penalty-free rollovers of unused 529 plans to Roth individual retirement accounts beginning in 2024, which was in line with federal changes signed into law by President Biden earlier this year. This change is designed to relieve account holders' concerns about overfunding their NEST 529 account plans. For example, a beneficiary may decide not to attend college. They might receive a full ride or other significant scholarship assistance, or they may attend a school or program that has lower than expected tuition. Previously, if you were saving for a beneficiary to attend college, but they ended up never enrolling, that would trigger a 10% penalty and you would have to pay income taxes if you wanted to withdraw from the account. But with the passage of LB 495 in these scenarios, the excess NEST 529 funds can be used to help the beneficiary with saving LB 495 for parents who are interested in helping kids saving will help lessen the burden to support information necessary. I would be more than willing to answer any questions you may have, but I'm Treasurer Morante will be testifying after me, perhaps not, and may be able to address some of the specifics of the impacts of 495 and the NEST 529 college savings plan in general.
Yes, thank you.
Not saying.
Do we think Marante's coming?
I don't know that he is, so perhaps not, so I'll go ahead and.
We've got people here.
Oh,
Okay.
perfect. Yeah, I'm off the hook.
You think it's just the first day we've ever done this?
What's that?
Okay.
In
Senator
that
Von
case, I'll
Gillen.
hold my question.
No, that's fine if you
I
want
didn't want to
to.
leave you hanging.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll have proponents.
very good, thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair Linehan and members of the committee. I am with bar and I am regressing today due to prior you have me today. December 23rd, I do want to thank, before I begin, I do want to thank Senator Breezy for introducing LB 495, and I am here to testify in support of the bill. December 23rd, 2022, Congress passed a federal omnibus spending package that included several new rules. Section 126 of the federal bill included a provision that amended the Internal Revenue Code. The change allows for tax and penalty-free rollovers from 529 plans to Roth IRA accounts starting in January of 2024. LB 495 would provide the same Nebraska state tax benefits for a NEST account used to roll over to a Roth IRA as when NEST account distributions are used to pay qualified educational expenses. I have had the pleasure of serving as director of Nebraska's 529 program for over 18 years and am currently serving my second term as chair of the National College Savings Plans Network. Today, the Nebraska Educational Savings Trust has over $6 billion in assets and 300,000 accounts. 35% of those are Nebraskans and 65% of our account owners reside in the other 49 states. Our statewide participation rate is 21%, which is one of the highest in the country. Encouraging families to save for their loved ones' education is an extremely important public goal to ensure the state of Nebraska has a well-educated community and workforce. When changes in a student's circumstances result in no longer needing to use 529 plan investments to the extent originally envisioned, it is reassuring to families to know there are options. This change for the 529 industry gives everyone another level of confidence to save for education without worrying about their children, grandchildren, nieces, or nephews' plans changing due to the student receiving a full or partial scholarship, admission to a military academy, possibly taking a gap year, or deciding to not pursue our higher education. While the funds have always had the ability to be withdrawn at any time, subject to tax penalties, they now can be rolled over tax-free to a Roth IRA. There are still limits, and it doesn't impact account owners and beneficiaries until the 529 account has been open for some time. But it is another step in the right direction to helping families realize the value a 529 plan can bring. In closing, I respectfully request the committee advance LB 495 to the full legislature for its consideration and adoption. Thank you, and I can happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Senator
Chair-
Carlson and then Senator Von Gilbert.
Thank you, Chairman. How much money are we talking about? How many dollars do people leave in those accounts or actually not use for college?
So today, our average account balance is a little over $22,000 is our average account balance in the entire trust. And nationally, the average account balance is $25,000. So we actually compare quite in alignment with the national average. So typically, there is not usually a large amount of funds left in the account. This is though an option if there were, like I said, for those scholarship opportunities, or they might attend a 2-year program versus a 4-year college. So it provides another option. But again, with our average account balance, there's not a large amount of money that I would suspect left.
And the 10%, is that federal taxes or state taxes?
So a non-qualified withdrawal would be a 10% federal penalty tax, and then on the earnings portion only. And then you're also subject to Nebraska state income tax on the earnings portion only.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then with the non-qualified withdrawal, there is the recapture also for the state income tax deduction for those who have taken advantage of that. It would be recaptured.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Senator Von Gillen.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Quick question. So I want to make sure I understand this correctly. For example, I've got 529 plans for my grandkids. If we don't use that, I can't roll this into my own Roth IRA, but I could roll it into an IRA for them or any other beneficiary, any other, if I remember right, the Roth or the 529 relational portion is pretty loose. To anybody else that qualifies under that 529 plan, is that true?
So first, Senator, thank you for having accounts in our NEST program. We appreciate that.
6 of them, 6 grandkids. So.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Always happy to hear that. You're right. So to answer some of your questions, you can change a beneficiary to any member of the family. But when this provision was passed, into the Roth IRA, it has to be the Roth owned by the beneficiary. So you would not be able to roll the money into your Roth IRA as the account owner. It would have to go into the beneficiary's Roth IRA that they have established. And then there are subject to the contribution limits of a Roth IRA. So currently that limit is $6,500. The whole package, you can only roll up a maximum lifetime of $35,000 total into the Roth IRA under this provision, the way it is today. And then the account has to be more than 15 years old, also as provision, and you also can't use any of those contributions that have been made in the last 5 years. So there are a number of limitations to that. But yes, meeting all those expectations, you could then transfer it to that beneficiary after that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Von Gillen. Are there other questions for the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Are there other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Donna Crownover, DONNA-CROWNOVER. I'm a relationship manager with Union Bank and Trust and have 15 years 529 experience with the College Savings Group at Union Bank. As program manager for the Nebraska Educational Savings Plan Trust, Union Bank and Trust provides the day-to-day administrative and marketing services for the NEST plans. I'm pleased to be here today to speak in support of LB 495, which would allow trustee-to-trustee rollovers of the unused 529 balances to a Roth individual retirement account with no penalty, as has been discussed, is permitted with the Section 529 of the Internal Revenue Code. With the Secure Act 2.0 allowing tax-free rollovers from 529s to Roth IRAs, the Act does speak to the requirements of the tax-free rollovers, providing the roadmap for individuals who wish to complete a federal penalty-free transfer. LB 495 would serve to align the Nebraska state requirements with the federal legislation that will become effective in January of 2024. Account owners as well as prospects often ask what happens if they don't use all of the funds in their 529 plan for college. While the NEST plans currently offer flexibility to address this question, providing the opportunity for state penalty-free options in addition to the federal penalty-free option provided by the Secure Act 2.0 to roll over to a Roth IRA for the beneficiary provides an additional alternative for Nebraska families saving for their loved ones. This may also eliminate some confusion for Nebraska investors who are familiar with the federal legislation, but concerned about state penalties, and encourage saving for college as well as retirement. With investors in all 50 states, the NEST plans will have account owners who may request the trustee-to-trustee transfers, knowing, based on their state of residency, that the transfer will be federal and state penalty-free. As program manager, we will have processes in place to accommodate these requests. I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. If there are any additional questions, I'm happy to discuss those with you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. Are there other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Excuse me, are there any opponents? Is anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? Senator Breezy, would you like to close? Let me see, do we have any? We didn't have any letters. No letters. So with that, we close the hearing on LB 495 and we will open the hearing. We'll go back to LB 580.
I apologize for not being able to be here.
That's fine. We didn't, the chair of the committee was confused. You're fine.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. For the record, my name is Senator Rick Holdcroft, spelled R-I-C-K-H-O-L-D-C-R-O-F-T, and I represent Legislative District 36, which includes Western and Southern Sarpy County. I am here today to discuss LB 580 and it would to protect the incomes of farmers and ranchers across the state. LB 580 and AM 634 would allow land that is currently involved in production agriculture its special tax valuation as agricultural land. The specific intent of the bill is to address land that is part of an annexed area but is still being farmed. The impetus of this bill happened in 2017. At that time, the city of Gretna annexed nearly 3,000 acres. Of this, 21 parcels comprising 888 acres were agricultural land. Under current state law, this annexed land automatically became subject to commercial property taxes. Coupled with normal inflation and market factors, this will result in a total land valuation increase from just over $5.14 million in 2022 to almost $17.75 million in 2023. Once again, the purpose of LB 580 and AM 634 is to allow land that is currently involved in production agriculture to retain its special tax valuation as agricultural land until such time as commercial improvements begin on the land. AM 634 assures that LB 580 applies to the 2023 tax year. Coming behind me are ag producers and ag leaders. They should be able to answer any questions you have on the origins of this bill and why it is important for those involved in production agriculture. And I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, Senator Holcroft. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Von Gillen.
Senator Rick Holdcroft, thank you for being here. Sorry.
My pleasure.
Senator Holdcroft. Question, I know situations where commercial developers have purchased ag land with the full intent of developing it, but they farm it in the interim while they're doing their planning or
Correct.
infrastructure or whatever. And sometimes that's a matter of years. Is there any exception for that?
There's no
as long as
exception
it's
for
got
that.
crops growing on it, it's ag land.
Correct, as long as they're still filing a Schedule F which is a profit loss due to farming.
Okay,
And out of the last 2 out of 3 years, they qualify for the special taxation
okay,
valuation.
okay. So even though, and sometimes that planning, well, not sometimes, oftentimes that planning adds to the value of the land. What if they flip it in between there? It's still, as long as it's got crops on it, it's ag land. Is
Yes,
that correct? Okay,
that's correct.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brungillern. Are there other questions from the committee? The Gretna situation is a little unique, right?
It is.
Because they skipped,
Yes,
they had to do that so they could grab the rest of it.
before Papillion did, yes. So that was well, I can't say that. That was probably why
There were some
it
articles
occurred.
in the
It did,
paper.
it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Gretna, so the land was incorporated.
Right, I remember that. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you very much. And we stay to close, or do you
I
have?
will be here.
Okay, so first we'll hear from proponents. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Rieker, it's Brucereker, and I'm the Senior Director of State Legislative Affairs for Nebraska Farm Bureau. And on behalf of not only Farm Bureau, I've shared this with you before, but I'm here on behalf of 8 organizations that comprise a great deal of the agricultural producers across the state. But those 8 are Farm Bureau, Nebraska Cattlemen, Nebraska Corn Growers, Soybean Association, State Dairy Association, Pork Producers, Nebraska Wheat Growers, and Renewable Fuels Nebraska. And I want to thank Senator Linehan for putting the land grab language out there rather than me using it. I did my best to write this testimony without that, but no, that's, so as Senator Holcroft already talked about, LB 580 removes the requirement for special valuation of agro-horticultural land that needs to outside of the, or excuse me, remove the requirement that that land needs to be outside the corporate boundaries of an SID, a city or a village. And what 580 intends to do is strike that particular language and redefine the statute that if it looks like agricultural land and it's used as agricultural land, it should be taxed as agricultural land regardless of its location. So that's the general intent. I also think it's important to share with you some language that is in Nebraska's Administrative Code, 350, Chapter 11. States this, and this is to how the property tax assessor is supposed to handle property taxes. Since urban development and other non-agricultural development can have an economic impact on neighboring agricultural, horticultural land, the sections that we're talking about, statute 77-1343 through 77-1348 were enacted, and I believe that was clear back in 1974, and it's been amended a few times since. The special valuation assessment provides for taxable value based on 75% of the actual value of the land of agricultural or horticultural purposes or uses, without regard to the actual value the land might have for other purposes, allowing persons wishing to continue to engage in agriculture as a livelihood from being forced to discontinue their agricultural endeavors as a result of excessive tax burdens. There's going to be producers and landowners behind me that will tell you how much their property taxes are going to go up because of what happened in this situation. And this isn't just isolated to Sarpy County. The numbers may be different across the state, but in some cases, their wish to continue to be involved in production agriculture actually costs them more in taxes than they make off the land. So this is part of what we're trying to fix. Senator Holcroft already talked about the annexation in 2017. A little bit more history is in following that. Sarpy County filed a lawsuit saying or stating that Gretna didn't have the authority to do this. And then in 2021, the Nebraska Supreme Court ruled, overturned that decision and ruling that the lower court failed to consider future development plans in the area I think that that's a dangerous area for us to go when you're talking about speculative or future plans. Until it changes its purpose from agricultural land to commercial, it should be taxed as agriculture, and that's our point. So what does that mean for agricultural landowners? At the tail end of the fiscal note, you'll see an example of what the analyst put in there about what this can mean as far as property being valued. If it's valued as ag land in this area, it's probably worth $4,000 or $5,000 an acre, given the 75% valuation requirement. But if the land is sold for commercial purposes at $50,000, then it's then going to be valued at $37,500, which is 7 or 8 times what it is for agricultural purposes. Until it makes that switch, it seems egregious that we would increase somebody's property taxes by 7 or 8 times. And so, once again, that's why we are pushing for this change. We appreciate Senator Holdcroft taking a sincere interest in this and helping us with this. And with that, I'll urge you to advance this to general file, and we'll try to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Reeker. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome.
Next proponent. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senators. For the record, my name is James Harder, Jameshharder. I represent the Harder Family Limited Partnership. We own a 117-acre farm in Sarpy County, east of Gretna. Our farm, along with several others, was recently annexed into the city of Gretna. My father purchased the farm in 1963. We produce annual and perennial crops. I grew up watching terraces and grass waterways being built on the big hill to combat erosion. We've maintained a conservation reserve program, filter strips, for over 20 years to protect the stream. Our farm, being annexed into the city of Gretna, does not change the fact that it has been and will continue to be a working farm as long as we can. The farm has been leased to our family friend and tenant, Tim Lorenz, since 1987. Tim is an excellent progressive farmer, and he needs to have access to land like this to be able to do what he does best. We have received the 2023 preliminary assessed value from the Sarpy County Assessor, showing the result of being annexed into the city of Gretna and losing our agricultural special valuation. The new assessed value for 2023 is now $2,590,616, as compared to the 2022 assessed value of $482,092. This is an increase of over 537%. And I'm sorry, I had copies of this to hand out, if that could be done before I finish. If the county tax levy stays the same as in 2022, our property tax will increase from $10,898 in 2022 to $61,878 in 2023. Property tax of $61,878 is 2.66 times what we can earn for rent. This is an unbearable tax burden forced upon us. This is a severe problem, not only for our family, but for other agricultural and horticultural land in Nebraska that can be annexed into a city or sanitary improvement district. I'm not against development. My home was built on land that was once part of someone's farm. I understand why Gretna thought they needed to annex our property, but it is not right, though, that we are being forced into a financial position where we'd be losing money every year. I believe Legislative Bill 580 relating to assessment of property that was introduced by Senator Holcroft and supported by Senator Day and others will correct this problem. It will allow us to maintain our agricultural special valuation for property tax assessment purposes. I'd like to thank the members of the committee for their time and attention this afternoon. Be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harder. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Berman.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and I appreciate you trying to keep the family farm and the family as long as possible. I think you pretty much said it in your testimony, but if you did keep farming that land and had to pay those property taxes, you would show a loss. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Berman. Are there other questions? You were specific. I don't know if it handed out. Yes, you were. So the property taxes is $61,878 would be 2.66 times what we earn in rent. Are you cash renting it?
We are cash renting,
So what do you get an acre for cash rent? Is it
$220 an acre.
okay? Thank you very much. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here.
Senator Linehan, members of the Revenue Committee, my name is Gerald Vindeska. Gerald spelled Jarel. Vindeska is Vinduska. Have a farm about in Sarpy County, about 7 miles south of Gretna. And as stated already, I think the first question that I think was should be asked, and I think you all know this, the reason for farm special assessment is to higher. Why did this exemption get put in there that if a piece of land gets annexed in the city? It seems to me if that's in direct opposition to what I think the answer to that question, I hate to be cynical, but the answer is somebody wanted that exception put in there so that cities did have the right to push somebody off the land, because I can't think of any other reason for it being in there. And to me, that's pretty evil because if you know, like the previous testifier says, if you work a piece of land for a number of years and you take care of it and you do what you can to treat it the best you can, do conservation work, it becomes more than just a piece of land. It's almost like part of the family. And to give government the power to force you off, basically, without being too dramatic about it, isn't that the definition of communism? Communism says, and we don't like communism, most of us in this country, because we like private property rights. And in the definition of communism is that the means of production is owned by the state. Well, what is this? If you can keep it as long as until some entity says that you can't keep it anymore because you can't earn enough money. I can give you an example. There'll be probably other people that'll have better examples, but how it works. You know, years ago, we worked, and Senator Albright knows this because she was involved in it, to work a comprehensive plan, because at that time, Sarpy County wanted the whole county to be able to be broke up into smaller lots. And we in the southern part of the county that was more agricultural, we formed a group to try to at least have some of the county be preserved as agricultural area and open space. And we got that, luckily, fortunately, we got it put into the comprehensive plan that part of the county is a conservation development district. It was the first, and it may still be the only conservation district in any county. I don't know about the rest of the counties, but at that time it was the first. But anyway, just this last fall, somebody bought a 55-acre tract right on Highway 31. And part of that plan too is to try to prevent urban sprawl, linear sprawls down the highway. And this guy wanted to build is going to build a recreation center, a commercial recreation center on the highway. Well, I went to the city of Gretna Council and asked them to please honor Sarpy County's comprehensive plan so that they would and have Gretna have their own conservation district that is in unison with Sarpy's plan. But they said, no, we've got a 3-mile jurisdiction and we have no conservation district, so they approved it. And that's just an example I wanted to give of how unless we have some planning that prevents, the atrocity of pushing somebody off the land, and that's why I hope you'll advance this. And actually, better yet, I'd love to cure this property tax problem once and for all. And I wish you would support LB 79 and just get away from property tax and go to a consumption tax, because that's a way more logical way to do it and get out of this mess of, property tax is just, you've been listening to it for years and nothing ever gets done about it really. But then that would be an ultimate solution. But anyway, I hope you'll think about it and advance this bill at least in case we don't, which we might not, the consumption tax. So thanks for listening to me. If you got any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? You said how much was sold right along Highway 31?
55 acres.
Does Gretna have a master plan as to what, because it is going to be like.
They've got a
strip mall.
master
That's-
plan, but it doesn't include anything about preserving open space. And that's what was disappointing to me when they moved into the conservation district of Sarpy County. They're undoing all the work we did to try to have a comprehensive plan. And as far as I'm concerned, what good is a comprehensive plan if it goes away in the future?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you. Are there other proponents?
Hi, guys. I've never been here before, so
Hey, welcome.
anyway, it's a pleasure. My name's Robert Waldeisen, RobertWaldeisen. Our acreage is only 13 acres with a homeowner outbuilding. It's in District 49, east of Gretna on the north side of Schramm Road and west of 168th Street. Our property taxation at parcel 011574127 as a result of being annexed into the city of Gretna shows an increase in taxes of a little over $2,700 just for Gretna City and Gretna City bond. Overall, tax increase was up $3,636.47. We are a retired couple living on a fixed income, finding it more and more difficult to pay our day-to-day bills. We are concerned taxes will only go higher and force us to consider selling our home or property, which is something we do not wish to do at this time. We wish to thank Senator Holcraft for introducing LB 580 and District 49 Center Day for supporting it. We are in favor of Senator Holcraft's bill. 580, I'd like to ask your consideration, approval, and voting in favor of LB 580. There's one thing I'd like to say ad lib. We're fixed income, and I don't know if you guys know about Nebraska Fish and Game. They give a $5, they recognize us as veterans and senior citizens. Okay, I'm a veteran and I'm a senior citizen. $5 means a lot to me because it's recognition. We're at the end of our deal here. And I don't want to be forced out because of taxes. I happen to like the people in Nebraska. I've lived all over. They're the best people I've ever been around. I don't like the weather, but the people's great. Well, I just want to thank you guys, and if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to ask or, answer.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions in the committee?
Just one.
Senator Cal?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you lived at your property?
We bought it from Harder, the Harder deal, all right? And we bought it in 2004. We moved from a farm up in the state of Washington. I work for Valmont, and I got traveled around a lot.
Very good, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Senator Cal. Are there other questions in the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here, sir. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, hi. I'm Tim Valla. It's Timvala. And I'm the founder and owner of Vala's Pumpkin Patch in Gretna. I'm proud to say this fall will be our 39th year in business. So we've been around for a while. And we got the second generation. I have 3 daughters and 2 son-in-laws that are coming back to the business. So hopefully we're another 40 years in business. And we have one of the largest agri-entertainment farms in the whole country. And we own about 450 acres that's being affected. So we're one of probably the largest landowner affected in this Gretna annexation. 300 acres is still in agriculture use. So that's probably we're talking about here, because we've already lost greenbelt on a good chunk of our ground. Like we have parking lots and barns and everything. So, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. We grow about 40 acres of apples. We have 50 to 55 acres of pumpkins every year. We kind of rotate with corn and beans, because pumpkins can tend to have a lot of disease problems. And so you just want to kind of have a good rotation, 3-year rotation minimum. 4 or 5 is even better. But so we kind of do that. And we offer the apples and pumpkins. We try to sell a good share of them through UPIC, where families can come out with their friends and just see and see all the farmland. And it's amazing to see the kids come out there and see, literally, acres and acres of pumpkins and apples, and that's stuff that they normally don't get to see, especially, in Omaha places. So, and, many families don't have family farms anymore where they can go out and have green places where they can play and explore. We see ourselves as the caretakers of this farm for all the families in the community, and that can adopt this farm as their own. And like I said, there's nothing more rewarding than creating a space for kids that are so excited, and parents are happy, and just having a good family time together. And families are really an important part of what we do. From a pure business point of view, with the higher taxes being forced upon us, it would probably be financially better if we just sold our agricultural land to developers and, put houses in or something. And we could buy apples and pumpkins probably from other farmers cheaper now than what we could grow them ourselves. So, but, then you would lose all the atmosphere of the kids coming out and seeing the pumpkins, apples growing right where they are and being UPIC. So it wouldn't be unlike going to a grocery store and just picking a pumpkin out of a parking lot. And our customers, would not be willing to pay higher prices for our crops just because we have to pay higher taxes on them. And we don't want to bring in outside crops. So I just feel that it's just too important for the community, and the atmosphere and the experience of actually seeing where they're growing and picking them right off the ground and off the trees is very important. And every community needs green space and fun things to do, and I think we provide and help that. And the neat thing is that we're not taxpayer supported. We don't get any grants. We don't get any deals. We're actually paying taxes, and most communities are trying to put in parks, and they have to pay for them and stuff like that. So I think we're a real benefit to the community. And we're not asking not to pay taxes. We want to pay our fair share. I've never complained. I never protested taxes. It's just part of the deal. And we love the city of Gretna. We love the Gretna School District. It's really great. Sarpy County as a whole is a really great place to live. And we want to support them as much as possible. We just want it to be fair. And we want to keep our business viable so that we can offer the best experience possible to the community. So. And thank you for your consideration. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to ask them.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Dunham.
Thank you, Chair Minahan. I just wanted to say thank you for you being here. Going to your pumpkin patch has been a tradition for my family since I was a little kid.
Oh, wow. Great.
The few years that I didn't live in Nebraska, I actually received your kettle corn in care packages, so thank you for that. And lastly, there's been an ongoing debate in my family about whether it's Valas or Valas for years. Could you say your last name again?
Okay, you're right both ways.
Okay.
This
is not going to clarify anything.
The correct Czech way to say it is Vala.
Okay.
My mom, for whatever reason, who wasn't Czech, she was Scotch, Irish, and Swedish. She liked Vala better. I don't know why, but so she insisted that we call her last name Vala. So we usually just say Vala now because we kind of follow my mom. But if you would follow my dad, he would say Vala.
Well, I've always said Vala, so I feel a little bit vindicated here.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Vala is actually probably the correct way to say it. But Vala is,
I'll get a recording of this and send it to my
it depends
family.
if you want to keep my mom happy or my dad happy.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you, Senator Dunham. Senator Albright.
Well, thank you, Chair Linehan, and thank you for being here, Mr. Valla.
Thank you.
I actually have taken my children. When you said 39 years, I've had both of them there, and they've both worked for you.
Oh, wow. That's great.
The Cordes family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
So,
have over 1,000 people work for us now in September and October.
This is a great time
So
for
we're a
kids
great
to go out.
employer
Yeah.
for,
It's all
a lot of high school kids, first jobs, and a lot of older people just wanting to kind of fill in. And so
Great
it's
barn
great.
that you moved there. So getting back to business, sorry, because it is a great business. Do you worry about Gretna starting to build around you?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we have 450 acres. We've tried to buy up adjoining land over the years as much as we could because we could see, years in good shape, for the future.
Certainly where Sarpy County is growing. So
Mhm.
thanks for being here today.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Albright. Are there any other questions from the committee? Senator Merman.
Well, since we're all chiming in.
Oh.
Used to be a pumpkin patch at Glenville, and my grandkids now live in Dallas, Texas. For your pumpkin patch. They might get an award for one of the farthest traveled.
Oh, wow. That's
So
great.
thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Merman. I think we've probably all been there. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for your consideration. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Other proponents?
Chairman Linehan, members of the committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is John Hansen, JOHN, HANSEN, and I'm the president of Nebraska Farmers Union. We thank Senator Holdcroft for bringing this bill forward. It seems to us that, especially for those situations where chunks of land, for whatever reason, would get annexed, they really kind of created certainly an unfairness relative to the tax, because the tax that's being levied is a speculative tax. It's not based on the actual land use. So it also creates a problem relative to orderly development, in that the tax structure is so high that it forces land in those kinds of situations to perhaps be forced into development that's maybe not ready for it yet because it's that development isn't there. So you've created I think the current status quo creates an unfairness, but also a sort of a lack of process. And it makes more sense from a process standpoint to let the land continue to be farmed as long as possible until development is appropriate. And so for that and all of the reasons that have already been expressed here today, I especially appreciate all of the landowners that have come forward. We have received phone calls at the office about this issue. And so this seems like a good remedy to it. And so we are glad to support it and we'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hanson, are there questions from the committee? I have one. I don't expect you to really have it, but I'm kind of giving Senator Holcroft a heads up here. How many acres when Gretna decided to annex this, how many acres did they annex total?
I do not know.
Yeah, and I didn't really expect you to, but I think it would be good for the committee to know how many acres Gretna set on before and then after this annexation. Any other questions? Thank you very much for being here. Are there other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Trent Lorenz, Trent Lorenz, fourth generation farmer, Sarpy County. My father, Tim Lorenz, who rents from James back there. The annexation of ag or horticultural land into a city without a special valuation has negative consequences for everyone that will own or lease it. The city does not provide services such as sewer and water to allow these properties to potentially be put into a higher valuation position. Without the services of sewer and water, these properties cannot be put into dense housing, commercial, or industrial development. Ag or horticultural land is the best option for many of these properties under the current circumstances. These ag and horticultural properties are also financially beneficial to a municipality. They pay property taxes annually, and they only need a low-maintenance road to support most of them. Numerous businesses benefit from a property that is in an agricultural or horticultural state. For the annual production every year, it takes labor, management, equipment, fertilizers, chemicals, seeds, fuel, and other resources. 1 out of 4 jobs in Nebraska are ag-related. It is Nebraska's #1 industry. Give these properties that are production ag a fair opportunity to succeed. Production ag contributes to our economies. Let these property owners enter or leave ownership on their own terms. Property owners should not be forced to sell because of a tax liability. The tax authority will also deter many prospective buyers. This is a statewide issue. There will always be land on the edge of development. I believe LB 580 can help with the transition of the city blending with the country boundaries. LB 580 will allow for a property to keep its ag special valuation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lorenz. Are there any questions, from the committee? Another question. I'm giving a heads up to Senator Holcroft. If it's already in the city, then can somebody still use an SID? I don't know much about development, but.
I couldn't tell you.
Because SIDs are usually on the edge of a city and then they are developed and the bonds get paid off and then but I don't know how that would work when you're already in the city. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Are there other proponents? Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Marvin Leaders. I represent, I'm still an active farmer, 78 years old.
You need to spell your name.
Oh, Marvin, Marvin.
Thank you.
Leaders, Leaders.
Okay.
I do not have property in this Gretna annexation, okay? I have a lot of development all around me. I live right across from, I live right across from the new National Veteran Cemetery. Okay. Our family has land across Sarpy County. My great-grandfather came to Sarpy County in 1881, bought the first farm in 1882 that the family still has. And my son resides on that farm. My brother still farms it. And there's been family on it ever for that whole time. All my life, we've seen Omaha come crawling out. Okay. The annexation that Gretna did should not have happened. It was a territory fight with them and Papillion to control it so they could pull some more valuation up closer to Highway 50 and 370. But it puts landowners in jeopardy in the interim. I've been familiar with the Greenbelt, the special valuation, all the way back from when Senator Dickinson from Douglas County initiated it. He had those problems in southwest Douglas County at that time, and it went on with this. Through the years, we really have at Sarpy County Farm Bureau and long-term landowners, the growth in the annexations came just sporadically, one at a time. You see what I'm saying? And a person's time frame to sell out to development has to meet each family's goals and time frames. This issue came about probably been 5 years now, that on 114th Street in Sarpy County, Papillion annexed 160 acres and took the Weiss family out. They were there before Nebraska was a state. Okay. I don't know if Papillion knew that of the Greenbelt issue. They had talked with the family and knew that they would have city taxation. Okay. It forced them to sell. Okay. They were not living on that property. You know, it was probably was fifth generation ownership there also. The NRD took part of the farm and built a dam in part of that there. And then they sold the rest for development, for commercial development. Okay. They kept, I think, 13 acres there. And on those acres that they did keep, I just looked up the valuation on that, and the assessor's valuation that I pulled off the internet is now $33,000 an acre to be based taxes on and to pay Papillion city tax levy also. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Your red light's on, so you need to wrap up.
Okay.
That's okay.
This green belt is our lifeline.
Okay,
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
And we need to continue it. And this is the option that we have, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here, sir. Appreciate
Okay,
it very much.
thank you.
You're welcome. Are there other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Is there anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan, distinguished members of the Revenue Committee. My name is John Cannon, Joncannon. I'm the Executive Director of NACO, here to testify today in the neutral position on LD 580. I appreciate Senator Holcroft having brought this bill. Anytime that we have an opportunity to talk about special value and what it means and how we get there is always a good opportunity for this committee, particularly, I can't exactly call the new members of the committee anymore because we're 2 months into the session. So the reasons that we have special value, and just in general terms, special valuation is it's not that we get to 75% of its market value. We're looking at valuing agricultural land at 75% of its special valuation being determined as the uninfluenced value. So as urban sprawl or urbanization starts to approach farmland, what we want to do is we want to recognize the influence on the market that urban influence can have and take out the urban influence and just value it strictly at its market value. And so generally speaking, when you're looking at special valuation, what you're doing is if you're in Lancaster or Sarpy or Douglas or any other place that's got a metropolitan area of any kind of significance, you're looking at similar ground in adjoining counties or maybe counties that are even a couple counties away. You're saying, well, what that ground sell for, and then you kind of transplant that over to your county. And actually, there's a couple of assessors or folks that work in the assessor's office that'll be coming after me that will explain this a lot better than I can. As a practical matter, I was 3 years old when we first got special valuation in this state. I am not the guy that should be the History Channel on this. Senator Von Gillern, I can tell you that I do not have 6 desk plans for my grandchildren at this point, but I'll catch up someday, I'm sure. But one thing I will say about the assessor representatives that we have here today, the assessor's job is not to jack values. A lot of people like to think that. They do not have a crystal ball. What they have is a mirror. Their obligation is to determine market value or special valuation in these instances. Their explanation of the technical requirements that goes into determining not just value, but special valuation, I believe will be invaluable to this committee. I would certainly urge you to listen to their testimony and ask questions and find out how we wrestle with this creature as well and what the policy reasons we have for keeping it around are. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions? Senator?
Thank you, Chairwoman Linehan. Thanks for your testimony. With regard to the special valuation, what is the purpose of the exception for property within city limits? Why is that exception in there? I don't recall.
When they struck that deal back in 1974, again, I was pretty young. My understanding is that the reason for that is that when you're within the city limits, when you're just outside the city limits, you can pretend that the city's not there for determining what the value is for your property. When you're within the city limits, it's a little harder to ignore the fact that you've got a city about you. That's my only understanding. There are probably other people that have a way better understanding of that than I do.
And I agree that's probably the reason, but it's not very compelling. It doesn't seem, but anyway. Thanks for your testimony.
And that's why we're here in the neutral capacity. I mean, as a policy matter, that is for this committee to determine and advance out to the floor.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Breezy. Do you know how SID rules, laws?
Just enough to be dangerous, ma'am. I don't want to get out over the tips of my skis. I think that they still would be available, but I'm not entirely certain.
Well, it's sanitary
Improvement
district.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you have a bunch of property And it's in the city. Wouldn't the city be responsible for the improvements?
I'm not sure. I wish Lynn Rex were here.
Oh, my goodness.
There she is. It's almost worth it.
And it's almost like Beetlejuice.
Don't, you can't. Go ahead. Anyway, you've been upstaged.
I could be upstaged by a better person.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes,
We'll
ma'am. Thank
have
you.
Your assessors. So next, neutral testifies.
Good afternoon, Senator Linehan and Senators of the Revenue Committee. My name is Dan Pittman, DANPITTMAN. I live in Sarpy County, and I've been the Sarpy County Assessor since 1999. Sarpy County has agricultural land, but no agricultural land market, as all the land is in the path of development, and it sells for other than agricultural purposes. Agricultural landowners located outside the corporate boundaries of a city or a sanitary improvement district may make an application to the county assessor for agricultural special valuation, Greenbelt. When approved, the agricultural land will be valued using land sales from outside of Sarpy County for markets that do not experience significant development influence. There is agricultural land located in the corporate limits of Sarpy County's 5 cities and in the developing SIDs. The county assessor, upon determining the land to be agricultural land, will derive the market value from the local market and assess a value of 75% of fair market value. The county assessor notifies the agricultural landowners and explains the value difference. The landowner's concern is that the higher assessed value will result in greater property tax liability. At this point, the discussion moves away from the assessed value to the matter of taxes. If LB 580 is written into law, agricultural landowners, upon being annexed into the city limits, would be required to apply to the county assessor for agricultural special valuation. Upon approval, the land would be valued by the same method as agricultural land outside of the city limits. And that's the extent of my comments or statement.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
You did fine. There's one more assessor who wants to. Good afternoon.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Chairwoman Linehan, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Derek Niederklein, DERRICK, NIEDERKLEIN. I'm the Chief Field Deputy for the Lancaster County Assessor's Office, and so I'm representing the County Assessor on this matter. I'm also actively engaged in agriculture, for the record, own farmland and participate in my family's cow-calf operation, so I certainly understand the issue, particularly with Sarpy County owners. I also frequent Val's Pumpkin Patch, so I think I've got all the bases covered. I'm testifying in a neutral capacity, just from the standpoint that assessors faithfully discharge the laws that are provided, and so not testifying necessarily on tax policy matter, but just on the application of that, and part of that is bringing perspective to you all as you make those decisions. This has not necessarily been an issue in Lancaster County. This, frankly, in the perspective from the facts I've been able to gather, is an issue with excessive annexation of the city of Gretna. However, you pass laws for the state of Nebraska, and so particularly if this law, as crafted, was implemented in Lancaster County, it would largely result in commercial development inside the city limits being valued, instead of $125,000 an acre, at grassland, it would be valued at $2,200 an acre. It'd be a 98% reduction in the assessed value. We've had issues brought to our attention so far in my career, 5 years as the deputy county assessor, where similar owners, developers, have baled hay on their property simply for the 25% preferential assessment. This would be a 98% preferential assessment. The challenge, I think, before you is that the law doesn't carve out farmers from non-farmers. The land is valued based on the primary use of the land. And so If a farmer is farming the land or a developer is farming the land, there's no distinction between the owner of the land. In terms of special valuation, its intent, there's testimony here today that talked about the intent of special valuation was to allow owners who are engaged in farming as a livelihood to continue in that endeavor without being forced off the land because of the excessive tax burdens associated with urban development. The paradox that is created or can be created, and again, I'm in a neutral capacity, but just bring this to your attention, is that it in effect creates a law that under the spirit of special valuation protects urban properties from urban pressures. That taken to the extreme, and nobody likes to think about this, the average value of a residential lot in Lancaster County is probably $80,000. Some of those vacant lots are used for community gardens. If those products are sold at the local farmers market such that they can file a Schedule F with the IRS, which I've learned that pretty much anyone can do, then they would qualify. So the assessment of that $80,000 lot in the middle of Lincoln becomes $2,200. The question will be, well, that's kind of absurd result. Would that happen? My response would be absolutely. Nobody likes property taxes, and I think we all have an interest in legally minimizing our tax bill. And while you've heard from people testifying that are the most impacted by this, we certainly could implement it as county assessors, but particularly in Lancaster County, that effort would be extended to not dealing with farmers who are engaged in farming as a livelihood. It would be, frankly, all others who would seek benefit.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Is Lincoln annex?
Yeah.
Do you use SIDs in Lincoln?
No.
Okay, so that's different. So when you annex, this is more city council play, but when you annex, it's usually developed, isn't it? You don't go out and annex 180 acres of bare farm ground, do you?
Yeah, I'm not involved in any annexation, only to the extent that after it's annexed.
As an assessor, what's the largest parcel of farmland that you've assessed inside the city limits?
Over 100 acres. And while it hasn't been brought up, there is a provision that farmers or properties are eligible for special valuation inside the city limits if they're enrolled in a conservation reserve program.
And what part of the law is that at?
I believe it's in 77 1344.
And what is it valued at if it's enrolled in a conservation program?
Probably around $2,200 an acre, as if it's
Just
being
like
used
ag.
as grass. Yeah.
Be like
yeah.
ag.
Yeah.
So
and-
if you know to enroll in the conservation program, then you're still at the ag land price.
Yeah, correct. I think the city has to approve it, and so forth. The definition in 1359, which is not being amended in this in the proposed legislation, is the criteria that the assessor uses to determine what is agricultural use. There, because of issues in Sarpy County in the past, that 77-1359 has been amended to include that assessors make the determination of what's ag use without regard to the fact that streets, sewers, curbs, gutters, utilities have been on the property. I think that's also something to consider, is that developments with streets and sewers would also be beneficiaries of this. And it's explicitly been stated in the law that assessors cannot consider the infrastructure in place when considering whether it's a true farm or its agricultural use.
Okay. We're not going to go all the way down the rabbit hole right now, but we will, when we exec on this, we may have some other questions that we will push through NACO.
Yeah.
Unless anybody else have questions. Yes, Senator Merman.
Isn't there some kind of language in it that the land has to be continuously farmed?
No.
And I don't know if that's defined.
And there are no minimum income requirements. There are no minimum income losses.
Okay.
I'm passionate about the topic.
I understand you're passionate, but you don't get to answer questions that you didn't get asked.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Are there other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you very much for being here. We will be back in touch. Are there any other testifies in a neutral position? Okay, Senator Holcroft, would you like to close? And we have letters. I think I saw one. We did have 2 proponents, no opponents, and no one in the neutral position.
Well, hopefully it answers some of your questions. There were 3,000 acres that were annexed by Gretna in 2017, and there were 888 of those were considered ag land acres. And I talked to the mayor, Mike Evans of Gretna, and he was not the mayor when the annexation occurred, but he said, it was not, he knew about it. He said it was not the intent of the city to annex this for property taxes revenue. It was really, as it's already been stated, they were concerned about growth of the city and not having anywhere to grow. So that's why they extended it. And maybe it was beyond what they should have, but the Supreme Court held in their favor. So we find ourselves in the situation we're in. There is a requirement to qualify that you have to have filed an IRS Schedule F at least 2 out of the last 3 years to show a profit and loss from farming. There was some language about 5-acre contiguous in the original statute, which we didn't delete, but I'm not sure that helps us out with the last testifier. As far as SID goes, I think a SID is outside the city limits. But when you establish, and I used to be in the SID and on the SID board, when a developer establishes a SID, he takes on debt. And so I would expect that he's not going to be taking on debt until he's ready to develop and then leave. The land would no longer be agricultural land, would no longer be farmed at that point. And then once the city incorporates a SID, then it takes on the debt of the SID, and the SID starts to pay the levy for the city, vice the levy for the SID. So with that, I will be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. So are there questions from the committee? I have a lot, but I don't expect you to know. Even if they're road to everybody.
I spent an hour with Dan Pittman. Sarpy County is no longer here, unfortunately, but he didn't have any issues with the distinction. So I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah. Well,
the new element.
sure that it's very consistent all across the state. But,
and this would be applicable across the. Correct. There are some issues and issues. So it is. It's not just Gretna that would be
how
impacted.
big was Gretna when they decided they were going to annex 3,000 acres? How many acres did it cover?
I'm sorry. Say again. How many?
So I drive through Gretna every day.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So how big was the city of Gretna before this annexation in acres?
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I think that would be, I would like if you could find that out. That'd be
Sure.
helpful. Okay, any other questions on the committee? Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, the hearing on LB 580 will draw to a close, and we will open the hearing on LB 495, right? No, wait, 180. We skipped over that, right?
Yeah, we did.
180. Welcome, Senator Brandt. Glad you don't live in Sarpy County. Whenever you're ready.
Must be Ag Day today. I like it. Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, Chair Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Tom Brandt, T-O-M-B-R-A-N-D-T. I represent Legislative District 32, Fillmore, Thayer, Jefferson, Saline, and southwestern Lancaster counties. Today I'm introducing LB 180, which would establish a biodiesel tax credit designed to boost value-added agriculture in Nebraska by incentivizing the retail of biodiesel in our state. Biodiesel is a cleaner burning, high-performing biofuel made for diesel engines. Biodiesel is primarily made from soybean oil or corn oil, but can also be made from animal fats and other fats and oils and blended with petroleum diesel. Biodiesel is a renewable diesel replacement that can be used in existing diesel engines without modification. Biodiesel works seamlessly with existing infrastructure and vehicles. Importantly, biodiesel is a major value add to Nebraska's soybean and corn production. Our state's farmers continue to be the most productive in the world, harvesting more bushels per acre year over year while using fewer resources. Nebraska ranked third nationally in corn production in 2022, producing 1.46 billion bushels, and fourth nationally in soybean production with 278 million bushels. Currently, every other row of soybeans in this state gets exported to China. And if something were to damage that relationship, it would have a devastating impact on the price of soybeans. The biodiesel industry's demand for soybean oil and corn oil is a big demand side driver, and we are in a position to fuel that growth with this tax credit. LB 180 provides that any retailer who sells and dispenses biodiesel on a retail basis will be eligible to receive refundable state tax credits in an amount equal to 14 cents multiplied by the total number of gallons of pure biodiesel sold. So if a retailer sold a gallon of B20, a mix of 20% pure biodiesel and 80% petroleum-based diesel, they would receive 20% of 14 cents or 2.8 cents for that gallon. If a gallon was retailed at B10, 10% pure biodiesel and 90% petroleum-based diesel, the retailer would be eligible for 1.4 cents. The credit is designed to incent dealers to blend as much biodiesel as possible without requiring anybody to do so. Credits may be claimed for taxable years beginning January 1st, 2024. The Department of Revenue may approve up to $5 million in tax credits in any calendar year. If the total amount of tax credits requested in any year exceeds that limit, the department shall allocate the tax credits proportionally based upon amounts requested. This bill sunsets after 4 years. I have filed AM 142, which was passed out, to ensure that cooperative members would also receive the benefit of the tax credit. This legislation is modeled on Senator Albright's LB 596, the Higher Blends Tax Credit Act, a retailer credit for E15 and higher blends of ethanol, which advanced unanimously from this committee last year and passed as part of Senator Merman's LB 1261. Just as ethanol has been a huge economic benefit to our state by adding tremendous value to a homegrown product, the same is true for biodiesel. And just as we designated an incentive to drive demand for that homegrown fuel with Senator Albright's bill last year, we're doing the same with LB 180. It creates a win for Nebraska's drivers and truckers, giving them greater access to a higher performing, more cost-effective fuel. It creates a win for Nebraska retailers, giving them a choice and a scalable incentive to offer biodiesel. It creates a win for Nebraska farmers, driving demand for corn and soybeans. This win-win-win for Nebraska's economy is exactly what we should aim to do with limited tax incentives. And I'm proud to offer this win-win-win for your committee's consideration today in LB 180. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Brandt. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Van Gilleren.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Brandt. Is there any requirement that, I don't believe there's any tracking mechanism for the biodiesel to be for the raw products to be farmed in Nebraska or
Right.
produced in Nebraska or owned by Nebraska corporations to distribute?
And there'll probably be some after me, but currently I believe there's 4 crush plants in Nebraska.
Right.
And there's a possibility to add 2 more here. When you crush a bushel of soybeans, you get soybean meal and soybean oil. And then that oil needs to currently be shipped out of state to be refined by a refinery. The hope is that we would have a refinery in Nebraska to do that. And that separates the glycerins from the rest of the oil. The glycerins are soap. And then that oil can be used. But the truth of the matter is, if you have an old diesel pickup, you can get French fry oil from McDonald's and run it through a screen. It will run on that. So, I mean, and you could probably run on pure soybean oil, but it wouldn't be advisable.
That smells good too.
Yeah, it smells good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Van Gillen, other questions from the committee? Senator Cal.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. Senator Brandt, are there plans for a refinery, or is this something that you're hoping will?
I think there'd probably be some industry officials that could probably answer that better than I could.
Thank you, Senator Cal. Other questions from the committee? Are you going to stick around and close?
Absolutely.
Okay. So our first proponent on LB 180. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Lucas Miller, Lucasmiller. I'm a soybean farmer in Randolph, Nebraska, and I'm here on behalf of the Nebraska Soybean Association and the Nebraska Farm Bureau. I'm testifying in support of LB 180. I live and farm in Wayne County. Thank you to Senator Albright for being our representative. Where my family has been farming for over 80 years. We raise soybeans, corn, cattle, and hogs. I currently serve as a director on the Nebraska Soybean Association. The biodiesel bill you are considering today would have a huge impact on our industry. On our farm, we use biodiesel to power our combines, tractors, semis, pickups, and irrigation engines. During harvest, we use over 6,000 gallons of diesel fuel. In total, we have 18 engines utilizing biodiesel on our farm. As a farmer, I'm dedicated to making sure that we're a good steward of the environment. Powering my engines with biodiesel is a way that I'm helping minimize the negative impacts on the environment. Using a 20% biodiesel produces up to 85% less carbon emissions than straight petroleum diesel. Nebraska ranks number 4 in soybean producing states. In 2022, Nebraska farmers harvested over 279 million bushels, I might have rounded up, of soybeans worth over $4.4 billion. Nebraska's soybean production and the addition of 2 new crush facilities make it an obvious state to support biodiesel policy. The added biodiesel policy opens the door for potential production facilities to continue to look to our state for growth. The bill before you would help grow market demand for this domestically produced fuel and add value to farmers. Currently, biodiesel production adds 13% of additional value to the price of a bushel of soybeans, which equates to anywhere from $1.75 to $1.95 per bushel. At a time when prices for our inputs are at all-time highs, anything we can do to increase market price helps. The positive impacts of biodiesel benefit more than just agriculture. This cleaner burning fuel has been proven to lower asthma cases and reduce cancer risks when replacing regular petroleum diesel fuel. Biodiesel also helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions from our atmosphere, and biodiesel's presence in the global fuel pool has helped offset diesel prices by about 25 cents. In conversations with my fellow farmer directors on the Nebraska Soybean Association and with other farmers in the state, I know not everyone is fortunate to have easy access to biodiesel. On our farm, we're able to purchase biodiesel through a local provider, Jerry Service in Hartington, Nebraska. LB 180 would assist local fuel retailers, allowing them to lower their costs for customers that are asking for biodiesel. The biodiesel industry has been a rapidly growing industry for the clean fuel sector. We see this continued growth to be part of our nation's energy plan for decades to come. LB 180 is a vehicle for Nebraska fuel suppliers to be part of the sustainable energy solution. I encourage the Revenue Committee to advance LB 180. I thank you all for your time, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Other questions from the committee? Senator Cal.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. What is the cost of regular diesel versus biodiesel per gallon for the consumer?
It depends on the blends. I mean, we're lucky we can choose what blend we want. Our supplier has got a biodiesel tank at their facility. So if in the summertime we want to run B20, they'll mix 20% biodiesel in for us with the straight diesel fuel that we get, the petroleum diesel fuel. As far as cost per gallon, those things fluctuate as oil goes up and soybean oil is down. That's constantly changing.
So it's not necessarily a less expensive fuel, it just may be better for the environment, definitely better for our economic environment.
Yes, it's definitely better environmentally, and generally, and there'll be people that after me probably speak on it better than I can, but it is typically cheaper. That's why it lowers, diesel fuel by about 25% per gallon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cal. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Randy Gard, RANDYGARD, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Bosman Enterprises in Grand Island, Nebraska. We currently operate 48 convenience stores and 1 travel center, all located in Nebraska. I'm here to testify in support of LB 180 and also on behalf of the Nebraska Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association, as well as Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. We at Bosman's were an early adopter of renewable fuels dating back to the 1980s. The primary reason for this was that renewable fuels had a direct positive impact on the state's economy, helping farmers who grow the product that we blend and supporting the communities and the customers that we serve. Biodiesel helps that money stay in the community while reducing impact on the environment and increasing energy security. One of the great advantages of biodiesel is it can be used in the existing engines, vehicles, and fueling equipment with practically no changes. Biodiesel can be pumped, stored, and burned just like petroleum diesel fuel, and can be used in blends with petroleum diesel really at any proportion. Biodiesel has an energy content, and we use the term BTU, similar to that of petroleum-based diesel, and offers several performance benefits, including significantly improved lubricity, which can reduce premature engine wear and tear, higher average cetane than traditional diesel, and similar fuel economy, horsepower, and torque. Cetane is kind of the same thing as octane, like in gasoline. So by blending biodiesel in it, it actually raises the cetane level, which is a better product in terms of how it works in a diesel engine. Our experience retailing biodiesel demonstrates that it's a reliable and desirable fuel. And while we try to source and sell biodiesel, the economics are not always there. And retailers, this incentive puts retailers in a position to sell more homegrown, environmentally beneficial fuel. Nebraska retails over 523 million gallons of number 2 diesel to on-highway the state's economy through increased soybean demand, adding value to our Nebraska product. Also, with this legislation, Nebraska would join the ranks of Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota with forward-thinking legislation that values the production and use of biodiesel. It's our best option here and now to decarbonize heavy-duty transportation. So LB 180 is a great strategic move for our state. It creates demand for locally grown commodities, will increase the availability of a cleaner burning fuel, and drive the economy of the state. With that, thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gard. Are there questions from the committee? Senator
Thank you, Chairwoman Lenahan. Thank you for your testimony here today. You mentioned 40-some locations. How many of those locations do you retail biodiesel?
Well, out of the 48 locations, 38 of those sell diesel. And depending on the blending economics, we can blend biodiesel and sell biodiesel at all of them.
Okay, in all of those 38. And this bill, this proposal, this credit, it would enhance your ability to offer biodiesel and would encourage and incentivize you to sell more of it, you're saying?
Yes, Senator, it would, because we look at blending economics. So you take, a gallon of diesel and maybe some percentage of biodiesel. And then what you pay for the diesel and what you pay for the biodiesel, you drill that down to the blending economics on cents per gallon. And if you're blending at B10, B15, B20, if this was passed, these cents per gallon would come into the blending economics. Now, I'll be honest with you, if it's worth a penny, we'll blend. If it's zero or negative, we won't blend. This changes the economics significantly in terms of the blend economics to help us get, to the right place, blending at B20.
So this proposal, it's a game changer in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, very good, thank you.
It's a marvelous opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Breezy, Senator Albright, and then Senator Dunn.
Thank you, Senator, listen to me, Chair Linehan. Excuse me. And, okay, appreciate you being here. I think I did visit with y'all earlier, before the bill became a bill. And, so do you blend this all year long, or do you just do it seasonally?
Biodiesel has it gels or gets like a cloud point at a much higher temperature than, say, traditional number 2 diesel. So we have what we call a blending season, which is traditionally March through September, October. And so what we do is how our business runs is we watch the temperatures. And as long as the blending economics are there, and if it's worth a penny or more, it's beneficial for us. And so the warmer it is, and especially during the blending season, we'll blend B20. We'll blend every gallon we can get our hands on. But, if it's 10 below zero or 20 below zero, something like that in January or December, something like that, we may go down to a B2 or maybe B0, simply because it gels or clouds up much quicker than traditional diesel does.
Okay, so, so you're actually putting the blend in a pump that's already there. Unlike my bill, people had to have new pumps depending on which 85 or 15 or whatever.
That's correct.
So
yeah, existing infrastructure works perfectly fine with biodiesel. Dispensers, lines, tanks, filters, all of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Albright. Senator Dungan.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. Thank you for your testimony. So B20 is the number I keep hearing as sort of a higher blend. Is that the common highest blend that we're likely to see, or can it go higher than B20?
It can go higher than B20, but what we tend to do is we look at our customers and we look at the engines that they run in their class 6, 7, and 8 trucks. And most of those engine manufacturers, whether it's Caterpillar or Cummins or someone like that, they'll warranty their engines up to B20. So could we blend more? We certainly could. But most of our customers, they have relatively new trucks. We don't want to void a warranty. They certainly don't want their warranty voided. So we look at it and say, if the engine manufacturer's warranty approves up to B20, we'll blend up to B20.
And as I understand, thank you. And as I understand it, the credit that you're getting is sort of scalable to, it's 14 cents for a gallon of pure biodiesel. And so you're looking at a lower tax credit with B20 because it's not a pure gallon of biodiesel.
Correct.
Do you feel like that's going to, you said you're chasing pennies, and so you feel like this will be a sufficient enough incentive then to continue increasing the amount of biodiesel you're blending?
In my opinion, I think it will, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Senator Dungan. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Next bill on.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon again. For the record, my name is John Hansen, John Hansen. I'm the president of Nebraska Farmers Union. We have been working on efforts to try to find ways forward for biofuels industry, whether it be ethanol or whether it be soybeans. And so for a very long time, because in all cases, we as an organization have seen from the very beginning the advantages of doing value added. So anytime that a farmer owns something, a raw material product, and you can add value to it, it not only works to the farmer's advantage, but it works to the community's advantage, it works to the state's advantage, and so you bring more value to it. So this is, I think, a very appropriate bill. I think it is going to be a game changer. The infrastructure is already there. I appreciate Senator Albright's question. It helps make that clear. So you're utilizing the system that you already have. So for somebody who works also at the national level and on national issues, the argument has been there for a very long time in the difference of opinion where the focus ought to be, whether you ought to focus on ways to try to grow domestic utilization for agricultural products, or whether you ought to chase the export market. And so you sort of need both, but the export market has always been, in a lot of cases, not the most profitable market. And so if you look at the domestic market, you get all of the economic benefits that go with those domestic jobs, and those domestic economic impacts ripple much more from the ground up. And so we've always been strong supporters of value added. And as somebody who's been also looking at the issues relative to the United States interest versus China's interest, we've been there for a very long time saying that this is not your average run-of-the-mill garden variety capitalists. These guys own everything. They own the political system. They own the government regulatory system. They own the financial system. They own all of these things. And so China will be our customer as long as it is in China's interest to be our customer. And at the point at which it is not in their interest, they'll be gone. And I think that there's no question about that. So I look at this as anything that we can do in the self-help category to help stimulate the utilization of domestic products here, especially now. Now is a particularly good time to do it based on all of those additional risks that I think are becoming more clear to a lot of folks relative to the export market, given the fact that China is such a big player in soybean exports. So in our view, this bill improves diesel fuel, it improves air quality, it improves the farm economy, it improves the state economy. And we would thank Senator Brad for bringing it forward, and I would be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanson. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You bet. Next proponent. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. Hello, my name is Nathan Nolte, Nathannolte. I'm the biofuel sales manager for ag processing in Omaha. AGP currently owns and operates a soybean crush facility in Hastings, and largely in part to federal and state renewable fuel growth, we're also building a new crush plant in David City, Nebraska. Both of these facilities will supply soybean oil feedstock to biofuel producers, which greatly increases the price we are able to pay locally for soybeans, and also supports high-paying jobs in rural communities. Bills like LB 180 are a big reason the renewables industry continues to grow, even with never-ending uncertainty surrounding federal policy. During 2022, AGP shipped over 3 million gallons of biodiesel into the state, and with this incentive, I would expect that to grow substantially. Biodiesel is good for farmers, the economy, and the environment, and as a producer of feedstock and biodiesel, we appreciate your support of this bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Senator Albright.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. And thank you for being here. I think my questions I wrote down are for you.
Okay.
So you said that 2 crush plants are operational in Hastings, operational in David City?
I apologize if I misspoke, but we have one operational in Hastings, and then 2 years from now, before harvest, we'll have a second operational in David
Okay.
City.
You said the others, it's shipped in, so that's from a refinery where?
Yes, in Sergeant Bluff, Iowa, right on the Missouri River, south of Sioux City. So
And earlier, someone had suggested that there could and should probably be a refinery here. I'd like to see that, but do you see anything in the near future?
yeah, definitely wouldn't rule it out. It feels like right now we have more of a soybean oil feedstock problem that we're trying to solve, and there's plenty of production capability in the U.S. But once that happens, I would certainly be something that we would look at either David City or Hastings to kind of vertically integrate those facilities.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Albright. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very
Yep,
much.
thank you.
Are there other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Andy Richard. Andrew, ANDREWRICHARD. I'm the CEO of Sapp Brothers, which is a privately owned Nebraska-based business that started and is still headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. Sapp Brothers operates 20 wholesale petroleum locations and 8 travel centers in Nebraska. Sapp Brothers also operates wholesale fuel distribution businesses and travel centers in Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, and Colorado. And it's from this Midwestern perspective that I'm testifying today in support of LB 180. Sapp Brothers currently uses, distributes, and retails biodiesel. Simply put, we believe in the product. According to the National Biodiesel Board, biodiesel is more biodegradable than sugar and less toxic than table salt, yet it works in any diesel system going up and down the road today. There is no new fueling infrastructure or modifications needed to rolling stock to make biodiesel work today. From our experience in states that have incentives like LB 180 in place, retailers change their behavior and it truly moves the needle. In 2004, when the industry was in its infancy, incentives were put in place in Illinois. We almost immediately changed our retailing behaviors and started blending and retailing biodiesel. Iowa has incentives and abatements in place as well. And those few cents help us to make a stronger case to sell higher blends of biofuels across the river. Surprisingly to some, biodiesel at times can be more expensive than petrol-based diesel. So with all the other tangible benefits aside, if it doesn't make financial sense, most retailers are going to choose not to blend biodiesel. From our experience with our retailing customers, we know that the advantageous economics to encourage small operations to purchase and then resell biodiesel is paramount. Like other states we operate in, we believe that LB 180 will assist in pushing Nebraska products and drive more Nebraska demand to bioblends. Thank you. I hope at any questions.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the committee? Senator Albright.
Thank you. I just have to ask some questions if you don't mind. Appreciate you being here. Sapp Brothers is where I stop on my way to Lincoln all the
Thank
time.
you very much.
I don't have diesel in my car. So. But so you're saying that this is incentivized in other states? You
Correct.
said Iowa and Illinois?
Correct.
There?
Correct.
And do they, what type of incentives are they throwing at there?
Yeah, so like the one I mentioned in 2004, Illinois not only has a flat excise tax on a gallon of diesel fuel, they also have a sales tax associated with that. In 2004, they said if you, I think at the time, don't quote me on this, but if it's a B5 blend or higher, you can abate all of the sales tax associated on that gallon of diesel fuel. Iowa has had varying legislations throughout the years. I think they just voted on something this year, but you can abate 3 cents a gallon on a B11 blend or higher. And then there's I believe it's a 7 cents and maybe a 10 cent per gallon excise tax credit on a B20 or higher as well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Senator Albright. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Earl, Jeffeefferrl. I'm here on behalf of Clean Fuels Alliance. We are the National Trade Association representing the biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel industry, and the industry's central entity for technical, environmental, and quality assurance programs, and the strongest voice for its advocacy, communications, and market development. Our industry has a vision that this domestically produced low carbon fuel with superior performance will exceed 6 billion gallons by 2030, eliminating over 35 metric tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions annually. Our organization is rooted in agriculture. Before our name change last January, we were known as the National Biodiesel Board, which was referenced earlier. And before that, the National Soy Diesel Development Board. Our organization was created through the efforts of numerous state soybean organizations like the Nebraska Soybean Board, using checkoff dollars to research opportunities for the use of leftover soybean oil after the crush process. Today, this biodiesel industry adds anywhere from 11 to 13% of value to the per bushel price of soybeans. Legislation such as LB 180 that you are considering today will grow market demand for this homegrown fuel. Last year, Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri passed similar legislation incentivizing the use of biodiesel. These three pieces of legislation will result in an additional 280 million gallons of biodiesel demand in the Midwest. Not to be outdone, legislation has been filed this year in Michigan and in Indiana that would make biodiesel a priority for their state. These type of renewable fuel policies have multiple benefits, as you've heard. They add value back to our farmers, grow demand for domestically produced energy, and is better for the environment with increased health benefits. Nationally, the biodiesel renewable diesel industry accounts for over 75,000 jobs, many of which are located in rural areas, and has a total economic impact of $23.2 billion. Here in Nebraska, this industry accounts for over $833 million in economic activity and supports $254 million in Nebraska household income. Studies have shown that U.S. production of biodiesel reduced distillate fuel prices by 4% by adding to the global supply. This equates to about 25 cents per gallon. As you can see, this growing renewable fuel industry is meeting environmental goals, adding value back to our farmers, and providing our citizens with a cleaner burning fuel that is produced here in the United States. I'd like to thank Senator Brand for sponsoring this legislation, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the committee? Senator Breezy.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. You see those measures in Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Those particular measures are going to increase demand by 280 million gallons.
Between just those three states, yes, sir.
And is that pure biodiesel or the blended version? I assume the
It'll
blended.
be 100, yeah.
Pardon?
Be 100 biodiesel gallons, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. What does that translate into in bushels of soybeans?
Oh, I'd have to go back and do my math again. There's I don't know off the top of my head, but there is an equation that we can run that can get that answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Breezy. Senator Merman?
I think you mentioned biofuels in aviation fuel. Could you speak a little more about that?
Yeah, so sustainable aviation fuel is one of the new fuels that is coming online. We have one member right now that's producing it. It's in California, World Energy. It's much like renewable diesel as far as, the way it's produced and processed. But you're seeing some interest from not really here in the Midwest, but in the coast, and trying to decarbonize aviation fuel. And so just like renewable diesel, biodiesel, it's using renewable feedstocks like soybean oil and other things like that for its production.
Is there potential for our plants here in the Midwest to produce that going forward?
The renewable diesel plant in Hastings, I think potentially could, but I don't know if that's in their plans.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Are there other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Okay. Don't be shy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Adam Feeser, Adamfeser. I'm the Director of Cooperative Advancement for the Nebraska Cooperative Council. Council represents the interests of agricultural, rural electric, and telephone cooperatives in our great state. As an association of farmer-owned cooperatives, the council understands the importance of biodiesel to the overall agricultural economy and the Nebraska economy in general. Public policy that encourages more access and utilization of biodiesel is good for Nebraska. We want to thank Senator Brandt for bringing this important piece of legislation, and also thank him for filing AM 142, ensuring that agricultural cooperatives and their owner members are able to participate in the pass-through benefits from LB 180. For these reasons, we urge the committee to send LB 180 to the floor of the legislature. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mick Mines, M-I-C-K-M-I-N-E-S. I'm here batting cleanup. I think I'm the last testifier in support, so I'm not going to tell you anything that you haven't heard already. But I am a registered lobbyist today, appearing on behalf of Renewable Fuels Nebraska, Nebraska Corn Growers Association, Nebraska Farm Bureau, the Nebraska State Dairy Association, Nebraska Ethanol Board, Nebraska Pork Producer Association, and the Nebraska Wheat Growers Association. These thousands of members are strongly support this bill. Again, I'm not going to tell you anything that you haven't already heard and don't care to hear again. The bill provides an incentive for retailers to sell the product. It's clean. It's economically advantaged to Nebraska producers. And in Iowa, I just might mention that in Iowa, they had a very comprehensive policy that made biodiesel more available and affordable. For an example, between 2007 and 2019, Iowa Renewable Fuels Infrastructure Program committed over $150 million to incentivize biodiesel as well as ethanol. The return on investment was 5-to-1 over the 13-year period. And we expect to see similar results here in Nebraska. With that, I would urge you to advance LB 180, and glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? Any letters? We did have letters, one proponent, one opponent, no one in the neutral.
Okay, just a few points here. First of all, I want to clarify one thing that should have been in my opening. The only biodiesel we are talking about here is over-the-road diesel. Okay, so in Nebraska, roughly half our diesel is clear diesel, which is over-the-road diesel, and farm diesel is red. And that, while I do use that in my farm equipment, that's a different animal altogether. So what we're trying to do is just increase the market for over-the-road diesel. Something when we were doing the research for this, it seems like over-the-road truckers really don't care if it was 100% biodiesel or 100% petroleum. And I'm not talking about the guy that's got the Volkswagen diesel. I'm talking about these big trucks. A lot of those trucking companies, I think they're told where to fill up. And they've got these big truck stops and stuff have deals with trucking companies, and it's really kind of interesting. But I just wanted to point that out. This adds 13% to the soybean price, and this is a game changer for Nebraska. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Brandt. Are there any questions from the committee?
What?
Is this a priority?
Possible. I mean, I'm waiting on the education committee to make some decisions, and we're working on that one over there. So
Okay.
it could be if it wasn't my personal priority, it would be a speaker priority.
Wow, I didn't know those were getting handed out already.
Well, unless you want to make it a committee priority.
Okay. Any other questions from committee?
We'd like to get this across the finish line, yes.
I get it. That's good. All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
With that, we'll close the hearing on LB 180, and we have our final hearing on LB 209. Senator Boster. Good afternoon.
All right, well, to continue with the agriculture theme of the day,
Very funny.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chair Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee, my name is Elliot Bostar, that's ELIOTBOSTAR, and I represent Legislative District 29. I'm here today to introduce LB 209, a bill that, as originally drafted, provides a personal property tax exemption for certain components of data centers and provides a sales tax exemption for the purchase of computers, servers, infrastructure, and electricity purchased for use in operating a data center, bringing Nebraska's tax treatment of data centers in line with 30 other states. There's an amendment that has been distributed that removes the personal property tax and energy sales tax exemptions on power and energy purchases. This leaves only a sales and use tax exemption for computers and related data center equipment. This legislation is a follow-up to LR 418, an interim study heard last fall by this committee, which provided a summary of Nebraska's sales tax structure with respect to those items purchased by technology companies operating data centers in our state. As I noted then, Nebraska has seen tremendous investment in our communities by technology companies who have chosen to locate here. Companies that operate data centers have invested billions of dollars in capital in our state to help power the country's need for internet connectivity. And while the data center investments we've seen so far are impressive, the growth in tech-related businesses and the reliance on internet services and infrastructure by businesses and consumers means that further development of data centers will be necessary. This development is vital to Nebraska's long-term economic outlook. We can position ourselves to become a major player in competing for billions of dollars of future economic growth. Unfortunately, as some on the committee heard last fall, we will not continue to see data center development in Nebraska unless we can already established across. Before you is the competition for data center investment, demonstrating what other states are doing to lure data centers to their communities. Behind me are testifiers from Net Choice, a trade association of technology companies, and the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development, who will speak directly to how a narrowly tailored change that affects data centers can spur meaningful economic growth and drive greater industrial development to Nebraska. Technology companies and the data centers that are developed by them have proven to be a valuable economic driver for Nebraska. How states compete for this type of business has changed. While a sales tax refund as part of an incentive program worked to recruit data centers under Nebraska Advantage, our state will lose out on additional investments unless we continue to evolve our tax treatment of this important industry. LB 209 is how we maintain Nebraska's competitive edge in an aggressive business environment. I encourage you to support and advance LB 209. I thank you for your time and attention. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Senator Van Gillern.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Bostar. Just a quick question. It seems, and maybe it's just perception, it seems that there are a great number of data centers that have located in Nebraska, and
Yeah.
particularly Sarpy County and the metro area through Google and Facebook and so on. I know one of the attractions for them doing that is our low public power rates. I understand that the map that is the map of exemptions versus non-exemption states. I'd be curious to see an overlay of, I don't expect you to produce that, but an overlay of power consumption costs. And there are some reasons that they're coming here and building here. I'd be curious to know, maybe the testifiers behind you will help me understand that too. The trade-off between low power versus the tax advantages that we don't have, that we're seeking, that this bill would seek to have.
Yeah, and you make a lot of good points. Our competitive electricity rates are obviously critically important for an industry like this, which is, why representatives like you and me are strong supporters of the public power system and maintaining it here in Nebraska. However, I've now worked on this for several months. Unfortunately, you weren't around for the interim study that we did here in the Revenue Committee last fall, but it does seem pretty clear that while the incentives programs that we had in place before, combined with our electricity rates and our sort of grid positioning and access were enough to really drive a lot of that kind of development to Nebraska, the competitive landscape has simply changed. And so now we find ourselves in a position where, in order to continue that, to attract that level of development and recruit this business to Nebraska, we have to make some changes along with it. And that was, universally the message that I got when speaking to, the executives of these national companies who are sourcing and citing their access to these development opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Van Gillern. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator Bostar. We'll have our first proponent. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Linehan, members of the Revenue Committee. I'm Steve Del Bianco, STEVEDEL, capital BIANCO. And I'm testifying today in support of the amended LB 209 on behalf of NetChoice, a trade association that I proudly lead with members like Amazon, Apple, eBay, Google, Meta, Twitter, and Yahoo. NetChoice has advocated tax exemptions in multiple states who have come to us wanting to attract large data centers to promote high-tech economic development. The Nebraska situation is somewhat unique. Your Advantage program, as you know, was already somewhat successful in attracting a handful of large data centers to the Omaha area. We briefed this committee in October on a study we contracted by Mangum Economics, which showed that Nebraska has realized billions in economic output and nearly 500 permanent high-paying jobs in those data centers. However, other states have been improving their tax incentives, and Nebraska is no longer competitive for locating a new billion-dollar data center, even with your competitive power rates and exceptional people. Your Imagine program is inadequate to attract new large data centers because of how Imagine is structured. And keep in mind, the Advantage window is closed. So a data center under Imagine that begins construction today would start the expiration clock ticking on its tax exemptions almost immediately, as soon as they start doing site prep. But the servers in these data centers are installed 3 to 5 years later after site work and construction are completed. And then those servers are replaced. Watch this, every 3 to 5 years, they're replaced with servers that are cooler, faster, and greater capacity. So Nebraska data centers would benefit under Imagine with only 2 replacement cycles, unlike in states that have long-term or permanent sales tax exemptions. So Imagine just does not provide long-term tax treatment that's adequate to attract billion-dollar data center investments with or without competitive power rates. So that's why we're here today, to encourage adoption of a new tax policy, put Nebraska back near the top versus competing states. As amended, LB 209 creates a permanent sales tax exemption on data center equipment, which is the same treatment Nebraska has long given to other industries for their essential business equipment, thinking of agriculture and manufacturing, of course. The amendments that Senator Bostar introduced today remove the exceptions for property taxes and sales taxes on electricity. That was to address concerns from city and county governments where data centers already exist, because understandably, those localities want to protect their municipal revenue streams. So LB 209 now only has a sales tax exemption on data center equipment, which gives a reliable long-term exemption. With LB 209, I believe Nebraska can compete with states like Iowa, Ohio, Virginia, Idaho, and Wyoming for the next round of billion-dollar data center investments. And I'll close by saying that new data center investments are going to be needed to store all those photos and videos and documents that we store in the cloud and rarely, if ever, delete. To get a sense of the scale, PPI's Investment Bureau's report for 2022 just came out. It showed information and data processing as the top growth sector for U.S. capital investment, increasing by 750% over the last 15 years. And 4 of the top 6 investment heroes in 2022 are companies who build data centers: Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft. Those 4 alone spent $94 billion just last year, just in the United States. So NetChoice members are already successful and enjoy their partnerships in Nebraska, and we look forward to building on that success. So Madam Chair, I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate being here. Next proponent. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Barbara Comstock, B-A-R-B-A-R-A, C-O-M-S-T-O-C-K. I'm here on behalf of NetChoice for LB 209. Like all of you, I was once privileged to serve in my state legislature, where we had to balance the budget and we're very focused on finding new ways to grow and diversify our economy and find new revenue streams. I was fortunate to do that by working with my technology community to advance our data center industry so that Virginia is now the leading site for data centers in the world. Like the Commonwealth of Virginia, I know Nebraska has made a great start in getting in on this growing industry that is the backbone of the 21st century economy. But as Virginia found, it is essential to update those laws to remain competitive. When I was in the General Assembly, we had recently lost out to North Carolina on $1 billion Apple data center. That is why I went to work on updating our data center bill with my colleagues in 2012. And then that bill was signed into law. The legislation was later updated in 2016. And then again, it's being updated now by our current governor, Governor Youngkin. As you know, when attracting businesses to your state, tax certainty is important, but you also have to remain competitive with those other states. Data centers like manufacturers and agricultural businesses continually invest and upgrade their equipment. So LB 209 keeps Nebraska competitive by providing that long-term certainty. Let me just give you a snapshot of what this data center industry has meant to Virginia. According to the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, in 2021, the data center industry supported over 45,000 jobs, producing $3.6 billion in labor income, creating $15.3 billion in economic output across the Commonwealth. Studies in Virginia found that our tax incentives returned 90 cents for every dollar theoretically lost, and emphasizing theoretically, because as we see from the map of the states with tax incentives, there are no states without incentives that have these hyperscale data centers. So it's really a matter of whether data centers are here or not here as to whether that economic benefit will come to a state at all. Hence why we in Virginia have continued to update, even though we are that #1 state, not just in the country, but around the world. So I would encourage you to do the same to keep this growing industry growing in your state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Are there questions from the candidate? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Luke Peltz, Lukepeltz, and I'm Vice President of the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development, and I office at 1128 Lincoln Mall, Lincoln, Nebraska. We do recognize, since this is the 5th bill out of 5 today, we're combining testimony. So I'm here testifying in support of LB 209 on behalf of LPED, the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Nebraska Economic Developers Association, which is an association of economic developers from all across the state, representing communities of all sizes. LPED works on many different aspects of economic development, including talent, startup ecosystem, as well as working with our existing businesses. But I'm here today to talk about business recruitment, and more specifically, what we are seeing and hearing from large-scale data centers that are looking at our state. First off, I do want to thank you for passing our statewide incentive program that went into effect in January of 2021. Imagine in Nebraska is a great program for most projects that we do see come into our office. It offers a lot more flexibility in the uses of credits than our previous program, Nebraska Advantage, as we specifically look at data centers and listen to what consultants and companies that represent these large-scale data centers. They specifically mention that our incentives are not as competitive when we compare to the other states around the country. There are 20 plus states that offer an exemption and or tax abatement, and many of their programs are 15 to 20 plus years in length. The intent of Imagine Nebraska was to be with the company for the long run as they continue to invest and create jobs in the state. They were intended to get up to 14 years, including the carryover period for their potential projects. One representative that we worked with stated that these large-scale data centers would only be able to utilize the program for up to 10 years, and that there's no guarantee another incentive program would be in place after those 10 years. This is putting Nebraska at a major disadvantage for projects of this scale. Our credit utilization timeframes and carryover periods don't allow companies to fully utilize the credits that they've earned, which is something they don't face in other states that we compete with. We as economic developers are confident that as a state, we will have an incentive program in place when Imagine Nebraska does sunset. But data centers that are making these large capital investments can't count on our optimism, but they have to base it on a financial decision. We feel that large-scale data centers are a perfect fit for Lincoln and the state of Nebraska, as these companies create high-wage jobs, are committed to being good community representatives, and are constantly giving back to the communities that they are located in. We've seen this time and time again, just up the road in Omaha, over in Iowa at Council Bluffs, Des Moines, Missouri, Oklahoma, Wyoming, all across the Midwest states that have a powerful tax exemption program in place. States are doing everything to thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Dungan.
Thank you, Chairman Linehan, and thank you for being here today. You were here for the testimony of Congresswoman Comstock as well, correct? You just heard that?
Yes.
Okay. She quoted some of the numbers here that were about the 45,000 jobs in Virginia, 3.6 billion in labor income, and 15.3 billion in economic output. Do you anticipate there would be, or at least sort of, proportionately beneficial increases here in Nebraska if we were to do that?
Yes, definitely so. Maybe not to that extent, as Virginia is leading the way right now, but what has happened up in Omaha and other potential areas around Lincoln, there is definitely more room for growth there.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the numbers would look like here, or is it? And if not, that's fine. We can get it more later. I'm just trying to visualize what the benefit would actually be, because it sounds like it would be exponential, and I'm just curious what that would look like.
We can follow up with the interim study. It was allocated in there. So the total economic impact in the 24-month construction period is $269.1 million, including 1,900 jobs supported, $94.5 million in total pay and benefits during the construction period of a data center. Operational, 34.2 in Nebraska. Once the data center is fully operational, 100 new jobs, 10.2 million in associated pay and benefits for other operating workers. Total economic impact once fully built out and operational, 82.4 in total economic impact, 300 jobs, and 24.2 in pay and benefits.
And that's per data center?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't know those numbers off.
No, that's totally fine. I wasn't here for the interim study, so I appreciate knowing that
Yes.
information.
Thank you, Senator Duggan. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank
Are
you.
there other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? All right, is there anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? No. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Linehan, and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Bill Conley, Billconley. I am the Chief Financial Officer for Sarpy County. I am testifying in opposition to LB 209.
You said you were neutral, or you came up neutral.
I didn't get
You're
up here
actually
in time.
opposition?
We are in opposition.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
For the detrimental fiscal impact it'll have on Sarpy County, and I'm here on behalf of the Sarpy County Board of Commissioners. I understand my testimony is focused on the originally introduced LB 209. The amendment that I've just recently seen, our board and our legislative team have not had full time to evaluate, but I want to comment on the originally introduced bill, if that's all right, and I'll be brief. Currently, Sarpy is the fastest growing county in the state, and it's a critical partner in the Grow Nebraska initiative. Sarpy County has brought in data and fulfillment centers that significantly contribute to economic development in the state. Much effort and dedication has been put into making Nebraska more welcoming for businesses, including our tax structure, and they've come. Sarpy County is proud to have not one, but 4 major companies: Amazon, Google, Facebook, and PayPal. Nebraska provides incentives, and companies are willing to invest back into the communities by paying property taxes alongside resident taxpayers. It is a continual partnership cycle that benefits everyone. As I stated in our fiscal note, our revised fiscal note, the impact of LB 209 would greatly reduce Sarpy County's share of property taxes by 3.6%, over $2.3 million, and the impact of that in the future will grow significantly as data centers under construction are completed. A reduction of this magnitude would materially impact the services that Sarpy County offers, and Sarpy would not be able to reduce expenditures enough to provide the statutorily required services to our citizens. Bottom line is it would be a tax shift if there's any impact on any property taxes, whether real or personal. So if LB 209 is passed as was originally introduced, Sarpy County would be forced to raise the levy to all other resident taxpayers by approximately 4% in order to generate enough revenue for county operations. The state of Nebraska already provides considerable tax incentives to businesses, particularly data centers. As it stands now, Sarpy County, including the cities and other jurisdictions, lose over $5.8 million every year in personal property tax from data centers because of exempted personal property on these facilities as a result of other state initiatives. LB 209 would increase this loss. So I respectfully request that the Revenue Committee not advance LB 209, at least as introduced, or any component that has any impact on real or personal property taxes. I thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. Are there any other opponents? Is anyone who wants to testify in the neutral position? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan, distinguished members of the Revenue Committee. My name is John Cannon, Joncannon. I'm the Executive Director of NACO, here to testify today in a neutral capacity on LB 209. Certainly appreciate Senator Bostar bringing this bill. He's my senator, so I'm always happy when I get to testify on one of his bills, especially in the Revenue Committee. And NACO is neutral with the amendment. We are sensitive to any shifts in personal property. And I do want to take advantage of my opportunity to testify to explain just a little bit why, as far as the history of personal property is concerned. And so personal property, as you all know, depreciates out over time. And so I have an asset over a 5 or 7 year period that's going to go to zero, essentially, as far as the tax base is concerned. And so there are a number of things that we've done with depreciable personal property when we know that it's going to be there for a long time. With wind energy, for instance, we took what was going to be a 20-year life item, and we created an excise tax for it. That's certainly an alternative that we have that's available to us as far as making sure we retain our tax base. But the reason that we're sensitive to any issue that involves personal property is because of the history of this. And so you'll all recall that, well, maybe I recall, sorry, that back in the 80s, a lot of the personal property in Nebraska was exempted out over time. And so there is a federal bill, it's called the 4R Act, and it provides for railroad and railroad-like property to essentially receive super equalization. And so if, and by virtue of the fact that the railroads have to account for every last brass widget in the rail system to the Surface Transportation Board, they said, we're paying way more than our fair share because there's so much personal property that's been exempted under the Federal 4R Act. We want to be equalized with everybody else. The first case that came out was Trailer Train versus Leuenberg in 1987. And that what ended up happening is after several appeals, they ended up paying 25% of their overall tax for the 4 tax years that were at issue there. The state of Nebraska cut a check to the affected local political subdivisions for $7.7 million in 1980. It was like $1989, I think. And you think, well, it's $7.7 million bucks, no big deal. We're flush with, we're doing well as far as our receipts are concerned right now. But after Trailer Train, those were car line companies. After that happened, then all of a sudden the pipeline said we want to be equalized with those guys, and then the railroads came in. And what ended up happening is the state of Nebraska cut a check to local political subdivisions for $121 million bucks in 1991. That's subtly different than 7.7 million. So again, we are sensitive to those sorts of tax shifts and the sorts of holes that they create in our budgets. And again, with the amendment, we move to neutral. We will work with all of our constituent members to make sure that they understand that we have vetted it thoroughly and that they should be neutral as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the committee? Senator Duncan.
Thank you, Chair Linehan, and thank you, Mr. Cannon. Can you just real briefly explain why the amendment pushed you into the neutral capacity?
Sure, it takes out personal property. It's only for sales tax. And so when it comes to a sales tax exemption, that's something that does not affect the local political subdivisions. And so that takes, I mean, and I'll be honest, we originally were going to move to just a monitor position. But by virtue of the fact that there was a little bit of history involved with the personal property tax, I felt it was appropriate for us to testify in the neutral capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Duncan. Any other questions from the committee? This short history that you just went through on the railroads and the pipelines, those were the result of court cases, weren't they?
Yes, ma'am, they were.
Not the legislature.
Legislation which was introduced, which over time had exempted a large part of the personal property base in Nebraska, and so agricultural machinery and equipment, and a number of other things, such that really the only folks left standing were railroads, pipelines, the people that have to account for every last brass widget up to their respective boards.
So the courts decided that was not fair.
Yes, ma'am. And there is federal legislation. It's called the 4R Act. It was passed in the late 70s, as I recall. And basically, it says that if you are like a railroad or a car line, you're involved in the rail industry, then you cannot be discriminated against as far as local taxes are concerned. And so, there have been a number of times in the past several years. I recall having visited with Senator Glure and Senator Hadley on different items of legislation to make sure that we needed to make to ascertain that we were treating the railroads and the car lines equally as far as any exemptions that we might have.
Except for the system. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you very, unless there are other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there anyone else wanting to testify in the neutral position? Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, members of the Revenue Committee, my name is Joe Cohout, Joekohout. Keep seeing this stuff about the chair, now I'm living it. Appearing today on behalf of our client, the United Cities of Sarpy County, a coalition of the 5 mayors, the 5 cities in Sarpy County. I appear today in the neutral capacity, presuming the adoption of AM 623, which was provided to the members of the committee. I would just note that we do appreciate the efforts of Net Choice and as well the league. I know that Ms. Rex is going to get up here and testify shortly. Senator Bostar and his staff to reach a compromise on this bill and on LB 209. I will tell you, a week ago, I would not have believed we were probably going to get here, but here I am sitting here in the neutral capacity, and I think that's an indication that all things are possible when you talk about revenue. Just a couple things that I would like to add is, and I want to specifically say that we appreciate the dialogue that commenced a couple weeks ago with Net Choice to find out specifically what our concerns would be with 209. They listened and came back. This is a compromise. This isn't everything we love. This isn't everything that they love. But at the end of the day, it's a compromise. And I think that that's something that I would just note. We, from a timing perspective, we got a concept at 9:30 Sunday night. And by 9 o'clock on Monday morning, my mayors had looked at it and had come to a conclusion that there was a place where it was a compromise. And so we worked with Senator Bostar's office and with Net Choice to get that drafted, and then ultimately have it here today and in this position. So with that, Madam Chair, I will try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Lenahan. So with the amendment, do you think that the pros outweigh the cons? There will be a net benefit for data centers to come into the community?
That's what I understand. I understand that from our perspective, 2 of the big parts of this where our cities were going to be specifically affected was on that personal property tax, as well the concern that if we were exempting out energy and all of these components, that would in fact just frankly hurt some revenue streams. And so when we said that, when we expressed those concerns, they listened and came back with an option. And I think that's, so I'm going to trust that they're the better experts on where they can go. But that's how we got to where we're at.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Calvin. Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for being here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Lenahan, members of the committee. My name is Lynn Rex, Lynnrex, representing the League of Nebraska Municipalities. We're testifying today in a neutral capacity on this bill. We appreciate Senator Bostar, Net Choice, Katie Zolkowski, and others that worked with us to try to accommodate our concerns. I will tell you, our board the stakes are high. And you may remember on LB 720, the Imagine Nebraska Act in 2020, one of our lines in the sand was basically current law as it applies to data centers. We made a lot of other compromises along the way, but as Joe Cohout said, this is a compromise. And it is our understanding that basically the benefits will outweigh what the costs are on this. So we appreciate everyone working with us because otherwise it would have been strong opposition without this amendment. So again, we appreciate everyone working with us. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Are there any other testifiers in the neutral position? I don't think we have any letters. So Senator Bostar, would you like to close?
Thank you, Chair Lenahan, members of the Revenue Committee. It's a real neutral parade. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on. One, the fiscal note obviously is representative of the green copy. Considering what the bill looks like amended, I think everyone's expectation should be that that will be significantly pared down. And the other sort of component of this that I wanted to discuss is more of a philosophical one that we deal with in this committee regularly. So with the amended version of the bill being essentially a sales tax exemption, what we're talking about here, forget the incentives for data centers of creating a more attractive structure to get them to come and develop more of them here. Let's say that wasn't even part of this discussion. Fundamentally, what we're also talking about is business inputs. At this point, the amended version of the bill provides a sales tax exemption on servers, computers, all of the kinds of components that are essential and used up in the process of the business that these companies are pursuing. And as you heard too, the speed at which these components are used actually was surprising to me. I didn't realize that servers were being replaced essentially just effectively every few years. But that's what this is. And so, we get legislation all the time in revenue about trying to ensure that our tax system is removing taxation on business input so that we are maintaining a business economic development friendly environment in Nebraska. And so that's really the other component here. It's that I don't think there can be an argument against the fact that what we're talking about are business inputs purely now, especially in the amended version. And we shouldn't tax those. And wherever we find them being taxed, we should address it. And hopefully this leads into a broader conversation that Chair Linehan has led with the introduction of previous legislation on sort of looking at a holistic approach of how to determine this. But that's what this is. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention. I'd be happy to answer any final questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Boster. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.